Have you ever done everything right, taken your medication, followed your doctor's advice, eaten what you were told was heart healthy, and still wondered why your risk of a heart attack hasn't gone down? Because what I'm about to tell you might be the most dangerous truth you've never heard. The damage that leads to most heart attacks and strokes after 60 is often happening silently deep inside your artery walls, long before it ever shows up on a routine test. And by the time you feel it, it can already be too late. I'm Dr. Johnny, and after years of working with patients who believed they were doing everything correctly, only to end up in emergency rooms asking the same question, how did this happen? I realized something had been missing from the conversation all along. What if the real problem isn't just your cholesterol, not just your blood pressure, but a hidden breakdown inside your blood vessels that no one has explained to you clearly? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you a simple, overlooked solution, something inexpensive, something most people ignore every day that can help support your arteries at the root level. Not just manage numbers on paper, but actually address what's happening inside your body. And once you understand this, you may never look at heart health the same way again. Here's the part most people never hear, and it changes everything. You can have normal cholesterol, acceptable blood pressure, and still be walking around with arteries that are slowly stiffening, narrowing, and losing their ability to protect you. Because the real problem doesn't start in your lab results. It starts inside the wall of your arteries, where damage builds quietly for years without a single warning sign. Think about that for a second. Every heartbeat sends pressure through your blood vessels. In a healthy system, your arteries are flexible, almost like rubber. They expand, absorb the force, and keep everything flowing smoothly. But when that flexibility is lost, when the inner lining begins to break down, that's when things start to change. The pressure hits harder, tiny cracks form, inflammation creeps in, and what used to be a smooth, protected surface becomes vulnerable. This is where plaque really begins, not floating in your blood, but embedding itself into the artery wall. I remember a patient, let's call him Richard. He was 66, disciplined, consistent, the kind of man most doctors would describe as low risk. He took his medication every day. He switched to what he believed were heart-healthy alternatives. He showed up to every checkup. On paper, everything looked fine, until one afternoon it wasn't. He collapsed in his garage right next to a bicycle he was fixing for his grandson. No warning, no dramatic buildup, just pressure, then darkness. And months later, sitting across from his doctor, he asked the same question I've heard more times than I can count. How did this happen when I did everything right? And that question is where the real story begins. Because what failed Richard wasn't his effort. It was the model he was following. The system had been watching the numbers, but not the structure. It tracked what was circulating in his blood, but not what was happening inside the artery wall itself. And science has been pointing to this for years. Research shows that arterial stiffness, how rigid your blood vessels become, is one of the strongest predictors of heart attacks and strokes, especially after the age of 60. In fact, studies measuring something called pulse wave velocity, which tracks how fast pressure moves through your arteries, have found that faster waves, meaning stiffer arteries, are directly linked to higher cardiovascular risk, independent of cholesterol levels. In simple terms, your arteries can be aging faster than the rest of your body, and you wouldn't even know it. And here's the part that should make you pause. By the time symptoms show up, chest pressure, fatigue, shortness of breath, the process has often been building for a decade or more. Quietly, gradually, completely unnoticed. So if you've ever felt like something doesn't add up, like you're doing what you're supposed to do, but still not seeing real protection, you're not imagining it. You've just been looking in the wrong place. Because until you address what's happening inside the artery wall, how it relaxes, how it repairs itself, how it defends against damage, you're not solving the root problem. You're managing the surface. And once you understand that, the next question becomes unavoidable. If the problem starts inside the artery wall, what actually helps it recover? But knowing this alone isn't enough, because there's something else, something most people have seen, avoided, even rejected, that might play a far bigger role than you think. So if the real problem is happening inside your artery walls, the next question becomes unavoidable: what actually reaches that level and makes a difference? And this is where most people turn away, because the answer isn't a pill, It isn't a trendy supplement. In fact, it's something most people have seen sitting quietly in the produce aisle, walked past dozens, maybe hundreds of times, and never once considered putting into their body. Beetroot juice. And before you click away or roll your eyes, let me be completely honest with you, it tastes awful. Thick, earthy, almost like drinking liquid soil. In fact, studies on dietary compliance show that a large percentage of people who try beetroot juice once never touch it again because of the taste alone. But here's the contradiction that should make you pause. The very thing your taste buds reject might be exactly what your arteries need. Let me tell you about Harold. Harold was the kind of person people assume is safe. He had been running for decades, ate clean, never smoked, and still his blood pressure kept creeping up. Not dangerously high, but high enough to worry. 145/88. His doctor didn't have a clear answer. On paper, Harold looked healthier than most men his age. But when he finally agreed reluctantly to try concentrated beetroot shots, something interesting happened. Week 1, nothing dramatic. Week 2, his numbers started dipping slightly. Week 3, consistent drops. And by week 4, his readings were in the 120s for the first time in years. No new medication, no extreme lifestyle overhaul. Just one change he almost refused to make because it tasted bad. And this isn't just anecdotal. A well-known clinical study published in the journal Hypertension followed patients with elevated blood pressure who consumed about 250 milliliters of beetroot juice daily. After just 4 weeks, systolic blood pressure dropped by an average of around 8 points. But more importantly, researchers also observed improvements in arterial function, meaning the blood vessels were actually becoming more responsive and less stiff. That's the part most people miss. This isn't just about lowering a number. It's about changing how your arteries behave under pressure, how they expand, how they recover, how they protect you. And the reason beetroot works is surprisingly simple. It's loaded with natural nitrates. When you drink it, your body converts those nitrates into nitrites, and then into nitric oxide, the exact molecule your arteries rely on to stay flexible, open, and protected. In other words, it feeds directly into the mechanism most people are deficient in, especially as they age. So while people chase expensive solutions, the one thing that directly supports this pathway is often ignored because it doesn't taste good. And that raises a question you might want to ask yourself. How many things that could help you have you already rejected just because they weren't pleasant? Because sometimes the line between discomfort and healing is thinner than we think. But knowing about this disgusting drink alone isn't enough, because there's a hidden mistake, something most people do every single day that can completely cancel out its effects without them ever realizing it. And once you understand why that disgusting drink works, everything starts to connect in a way most people were never taught. Because the real power behind beetroot juice isn't the vegetable itself, it's what it activates inside your body. A molecule called nitric oxide. Now I want you to think of nitric oxide as a signal, a message your body sends to your blood vessels. When that signal is strong, your arteries relax, widen, and stay flexible. Blood flows smoothly, pressure stays controlled. The inner lining of your vessels acts like a protective shield, keeping harmful particles from sticking and building up. But when that signal weakens, and after the age of 50 or 60, it almost always does, everything begins to change. Your arteries don't open the way they used to. They become tighter, stiffer, less responsive. Blood has to push harder to get through, pressure rises, and more importantly, tiny gaps begin to form in the vessel wall, creating the perfect environment for plaque to develop. This isn't theory, it's been studied for decades. Research has shown that reduced nitric oxide availability is directly linked to endothelial dysfunction. That's the breakdown of the inner lining of your arteries, and it's considered one of the earliest steps in the development of cardiovascular disease. In other words, long before a heart attack ever happens, this system has already been failing quietly in the background. And here's where it gets even more important. Most people assume their body will just keep producing nitric oxide naturally. But with age, that internal system, the one responsible for generating it, starts to decline sharply. Some estimates suggest that by the time you reach your 60s, your natural production can drop dramatically, leaving your arteries without the support they once relied on. So even if you're doing everything right, exercising, eating better, taking medication, you may still be missing this one critical piece. And that's exactly why beetroot juice matters, because it doesn't rely on your body's aging system to produce nitric oxide. Instead, it uses what's called a nitrate pathway, a kind of backup system. The nitrates from beetroot are converted step by step into nitric oxide, bypassing the weakened process entirely. It's like taking a detour around a broken road. Your body still gets the signal, your arteries still respond. The system starts working again, not because it was fixed, but because it was supported in a different way. And that's why some people notice changes within hours of drinking it, not because it's magic, but because it's directly feeding the exact mechanism their body has been lacking. So when you hear that a simple drink can affect blood pressure circulation, even arterial flexibility, it's not hype, it's physiology. But here's the part almost nobody talks about, and it might surprise you. Even if you're drinking beetroot juice correctly, even if you understand this entire pathway, there's a common daily habit that can quietly shut this whole system down completely, and most people are doing it every single morning without thinking twice. But here's where things take a turn most people never expect. Because even if you're drinking beetroot juice every day, even if you understand the nitric oxide pathway, one simple habit can quietly cancel everything out. And chances are, you're doing it every single morning. Antibacterial mouthwash. It sounds harmless, right? Clean breath, better hygiene. That's what we've all been told. But what almost no one explains is that the nitric oxide pathway you just learned about doesn't happen in isolation. It depends on bacteria living on your tongue. Not harmful bacteria, not something you need to kill, but essential bacteria, ones that convert nitrates from beetroot into nitrites, the critical step before your body can produce nitric oxide. And when you use antibacterial mouthwash, you wipe them out. Let that sink in for a moment. You could be drinking the most powerful artery-supporting beverage every morning, and then seconds later, unknowingly, shutting down the very system that makes it work. This isn't speculation. A study published in Free Radical Biology and Medicine found that using antibacterial mouthwash significantly reduced the blood pressure-lowering effects of dietary nitrates. In some cases, the benefits were almost completely eliminated. Completely. Now think about how many people are doing both, trying to improve their health while unknowingly blocking their own progress. I saw this exact pattern with someone I'll call Daniel. Daniel was disciplined. He had already started drinking beetroot juice after hearing about its benefits. He tracked his blood pressure daily, but week after week, nothing changed. Same numbers, same frustration. When we looked closer, there it was. Twice a day, every day, antibacterial mouthwash. He had no idea it mattered, so he made one simple change. He stopped using it in the morning, especially before his beetroot drink. Within 2 weeks, his readings started to shift. Not dramatically overnight, but consistently. Enough to prove something was finally working. That's how subtle this is. Not a major lifestyle overhaul, not a new medication, just removing a hidden interference that was quietly blocking the entire pathway. And it doesn't stop there, because mouthwash isn't the only mistake. Many people also turn to L-arginine supplements thinking they're boosting nitric oxide. But here's the issue: if your body's internal system is already weakened, especially with age, adding more raw material doesn't fix the problem. It's like trying to power a broken engine with better fuel. The system still can't use it effectively, so you end up spending money without getting results. And that's the pattern we see over and over again. People aren't failing because they're not trying. They're failing because something is interfering. Something small, easy to overlook, but powerful enough to shut everything down. So before you assume something doesn't work, it's worth asking, is there something you're doing every day that's quietly undoing your progress? Because once you remove the interference, things can change faster than you expect. But even if you fix this, even if you get the pathway working again, there's still one more piece, something most people consume daily that may be damaging your arteries at a deeper level than you realize. So now you know the mechanism, you know about the drink, and you know what can silently cancel it out. But here's the part that decides whether this actually works for you or becomes just another thing you tried and gave up on. Because it's not just what you drink, it's how you use it and what you do around it. Most people get this wrong. They try beetroot once, maybe twice, hate the taste, and quit before anything has a chance to change. Or they drink it randomly at different times of the day, mixed with habits that interfere with its effect, and then conclude it doesn't work. But the body doesn't respond to randomness. It responds to consistency. If you're going to use this the right way, it has to be simple, repeatable, almost automatic. The most effective approach based on both research and real-world use is this. Take it in the morning. About 250 milliliters of fresh beetroot juice, or a concentrated shot if you can't handle the volume. Keep it cold, it helps slightly with the taste. Don't sip it slowly. Treat it like medicine. Take it in one go and move on. And most importantly, avoid antibacterial mouthwash before you drink it. Give your body the chance to actually use what you're giving it. Now here's what most people don't realize. The effect starts fast, but the real change takes time. Within 2 to 3 hours, your blood vessels begin to relax. Some people can actually measure a drop in blood pressure the same day. But that's just the surface. The deeper benefits, the ones that matter, build gradually. After a couple of weeks, you may notice your readings becoming more consistent. Not dramatic, but stable. Numbers that used to spike start settling down. After a month or two, circulation improves. Cold hands and feet begin to warm up. Walking feels easier. There's a subtle shift in how your body responds to effort. And over several months, this is where it becomes meaningful. Your arteries, living tissue, start behaving differently. Less rigid, more responsive, less inflamed. Not because you forced them, but because you finally gave them what they were missing. And here's something most people overlook. You don't have to guess whether it's working. There are simple nitric oxide test strips, small, inexpensive, that can show you within seconds whether your body's actually producing the signal we've been talking about. It turns from pale to deep pink when the pathway is active. It's one of the few times in health where you can see something invisible almost instantly. So instead of wondering, you can verify. But let me ask you something. How many times have you tried something and stopped just before it had the chance to work? Because this only works if you stay with it long enough to let your body respond. And that brings us to the final point. The one that most people never connect. Even if you're doing everything right, drinking it correctly, avoiding the mistakes, staying consistent, there's still one everyday factor that can quietly damage your arteries in the background, slowing or even reversing your progress. And if you don't address it, nothing else will matter as much as you think. Now that you know how powerful something as simple as beetroot juice can be for your arteries, and how small daily habits can either help or harm your heart and kidneys, the most important thing to remember is this: you are not powerless. Every choice you make, every small change, has the potential to protect your body and improve your health starting today. So here's what I want you to do. Save this video so you can refer back to these tips whenever you need them, and subscribe to this channel. That way you'll get the latest medical insights and practical health advice straight to your feed, helping you take care of your kidneys, heart, and overall well-being. Remember, it's never too late to take control. Even small, consistent actions like the ones we've discussed today can create lasting change. Help your arteries stay flexible and keep your kidneys functioning at their best. Your health is in your hands, and the knowledge you gain here can truly make a difference. Stay proactive, stay informed, and let this be the start of a healthier, stronger you.